we actually don't really know where his best position is. And do you know what? It was entirely predictable. When those links came out about Kai Havertz, everyone went, we don't really know what he does. His 3 years at Chelsea weren't great. Not sure what his best position is, what his best attribute is. Now, the reason I'm saying all this before everyone goes, oh, here we go, a couple bad games, back on him. No, because I was very praising. It wasn't that long ago. He was brilliant at Brighton, man of the match, and deservedly so.
It's not a couple of games anyway. It's the majority of the season. But
cool. Fair enough. Yeah. Fair enough. But my thing is, when we're talking about Arteta making mistakes as well, like that's a big one, 65 million for a lack of clarity in one player and one signing. And we can't actually afford basically any more of those. The next 65 million pound player has to be a difference maker, has to be a complete game changer like Declan Rice has been. And they've got to have a very clear part to play in this squad. It's like in this 11, in this team, in one sole position. And that's where I go about the mistakes. Like that was I'm not saying it was a mistake because maybe it was. We still got more to see.
I'm not buying that, James. I'm not buying that. I'll tell you what.
What do you disagree with?
I do disagree with that, because I'll tell you what. Listen. There was a time when I wasn't the biggest fan of Mikel, but he's won me over, and I feel like over the last couple of years, right, we are challenging for the title. He got no divine. That was a big thing a couple of years ago. If you'd have said 2 years ago Arsenal going to win it, you'd have been rinsed for it. Clipped and rinsed for it. We are genuinely title contenders now. And the Kai Havertz one. I don't think that's. If you look at it, is it been a failure? I don't think it has. I don't know if it. But I tell you what has been a failure. I tell you what has been a failure. 35 million on people like Vieira, and that's never playing. You know what I mean? That's the sort of ones that I'm looking at now. Like you spend 35 million on.
But they can both be failures, Lee. They can both be failures.
Yeah, but I don't think Kai Havertz has been a failure this season.
He's not been a success.
I don't think he has. I think that
he hasn't been.
Where everybody was, no one was saying that he wasn't. We've had 3 poor performances, and I'm gonna say yes, he was poor on Wednesday, but so was the other 2. And I'm going to put this to you now. When the 2 substitutes come on, they was just as poor as well. So is it not? No,
but I mean,
yes. Sorry to cut you, John. No. I just want to touch on that. Sorry, Lee. Just because, that's why I'm removing the blame on Kai Havertz himself. Like when the change was made against Bayern, he was in midfield at that point, but he was basically playing on the last man. Like he's clearly told to stand there. So it's not just like what Kai can offer, because I was complimentary of his first 45 against Villa. I thought he played quite well. No one else seemed to think that. I liked his first 45 minutes against Villa, but Arteta doesn't have a very clear plan from what I can see for what he definitely wants to do with him. Now, you say Fabio Vieira, but clubs can get £35 million signings wrong. But this summer, we had £200 million go on 4 players. And we might put another 400 million on apparently a left back, another midfielder, a striker, and a winger. We can't get any of them wrong. Well, we really can't.
I get what you're saying, James, and I've got to bring this in there. One of the reasons that we've done well over this last 4 or 5 months also, and the way we're playing at the moment, is because we've got a stopgap of a midfield player as well. That's got to be addressed. You know what I mean? Jorginho. I thought he was brilliant. I thought he played really well yesterday, but he hasn't got the legs. He hasn't got the mobility. He hasn't got what we need we need a young version of that, you know what I mean? If I'll be honest. But we've stopgap for when did we buy him? In January last season. We've gone through the whole summer.
Do you know Jorginho has played this much because Havertz is a failure? Fact. The midfield is meant to be Rice, Havertz, Odegaard. That was meant to be the midfield. I'm not saying having it. Like Arteta said, he's a midfielder.
I'm not too sure if it was. I think if I'll be really honest with Havertz, if you want to say what it was, I think he was bought as a player that can play in multiple positions. So instead of like buying a 65 million or 80 million pound that's the number 8 position. I think there's one that he can play here and he can play there. Sometimes I think that can go for you, and sometimes it can go against you.
Yeah,
and I think that's what that's to me is what it is. Well, when I look at that, I think that's okay if you're going to spend that money, but you've got you're buying other players that haven't like unfortunately.
But sorry, Lee, for I think for a lot of 2024, it's worked for him, the Havertz thing. I think we've clearly played our best football when he's been up front over Jesus. I agree with that. I've been praising him for having a more almost professional mentality and approach to the game than sort of other options up front. And I've given him a lot of credit in this calendar year because I think he's deserved it, Kai Havertz. But when you talk about getting players that can play in multiple positions, I've just never known ever, and tell me in the comments if I'm wrong, of a player that is a box-to-box / target man 9. Like Alexis McAllister is a 6, but maybe an 8. De Bruyne, Bernardo Silva, 8s, but maybe 10s. Foden is maybe a 10, but maybe wide. I've never known, like Granit Xhaka, at no point last season would we have put him up front. Now, I know that's I'm being hyperbolic, but do you get my point? Like, it's such a contrast in how you use him that suggests a complete lack of real clarity in what we want to do. But I can hear the comments already now going, why are you spending so long talking about Kai Havertz? Because I'm like I said, I'm sort of done blaming him. I think he's doing what he's been asked to do and he's given it his all. I just think that come this summer, and where I think Arteta does take a little bit of blame is £200 million was spent and he had a good squad that he could have managed better, A, via signings and B, via managing minutes earlier in the season, so that combined at this part, we were better equipped for it.
And I'll get it, but I'll tell you where Arteta's made mistakes. In my opinion, where Arteta's made mistakes, right? I see a goalkeeper today that should still be at the Arsenal. At 6 o'clock today, I watched a goalkeeper that should still be at the Arsenal, right? Okay.
Did they go through Villa?
So, yeah, down to him. All right. And then I went and watched the West Ham game, and our team is crying out for a player that can just dictate play from where he was in that position. If he was still at this football club, I think Arsenal would. I know, like Jordan don't like him, but I do think that we would have, if we kept him for another year, I think Arsenal would have been a much, much better side. The way he controls games in from midfield now, I'm really, really impressed with his performance today. And when I watched it, and you know what about that performance today with Granit Xhaka? They were under the pump in the first half, and he has got the experience and know-how to overgain and get that going through. And I just think at the end of the day, there have been mistakes made by Arteta. I really do think that they have. But my point being, so has Pep. Do you imagine if we're playing and you take off, I don't know, your best 2 players and you lose the game? There'd be a meltdown with us.
But I think you're right.